comes to the city, and with the darkness comes a change of pace. The hurried tempo of daytime activity subsides and gives way to evening. The shops are closed. The offices are deserted. The toil of the day is ended. But night has a pace of its own. It has many moods, sometimes soft like the touch of velvet. It pours out its own brand of trouble. It's the Night Watch. All across the city, the special problems of the Night Watch are festering. In these hours of leisure, when people try to relax or strive to escape from the troubles of the day, some merely run head-on into more problems. For the men of the Night Watch, troubles can flare up in any part of the city. It may crop up here, or maybe here. But one of the most common and yet difficult calls the men of the Night Watch must answer begins right here. Begins silently and secretly. The prowler can be many things. He may be a neighborhood boy taking a shortcut home through a backyard. He may be a drunk choosing a secluded place to relieve himself or sleep it off. But many times he is a burglar or a psychopath, a peeper, a dangerous and desperate man seeking some outlet for his abnormal and unpredictable desires. He is wary, alert, tense, and especially, he is dangerous. In these moments of terror, the victim makes her desperate call for help. And the first step in the rapid chain of police communications begins. Within seconds, the call is recorded, processed, channeled, and broadcast.
All units in the vicinity and Unit 15, Prowler now, 2229 Westminster Avenue.
The prime factor in answering a Prowler Now call is safe speed. Between her call and rescue, the victim counts her every pounding heartbeat, hears every tiny sound as the approach of horror. Every moment before the police arrive is a renewed nightmare. Yet, at the same time, speed must be sacrificed to silence when approaching the actual location. The screech of tires when turning a corner may be the tip-off the Prowler needs. Even the rattle of a manhole cover could warn the suspect of the police officer's approach. Or the rustle of the car antenna through low-hanging trees could alert the prowler and give him the extra seconds he may need to escape. Familiarity with the general area is always helpful in cutting off avenues of escape. In any event, it should be determined as soon as possible on which side of the street the location in question is situated. Once in the area, any check on the address should be done with a flashlight rather than with the car spotlight, and the light should be directed at the opposite side of the street. Before going into the actual vicinity of the house, the headlights are dimmed. In a few seconds, even the sound of the door opening may be considered excessive noise. For this reason, the door should be set ajar before actually stopping.
Unit 1.
The radio volume should be turned down to a minimum. This eliminates any unnecessary noise from the radio, but at the same time keeps it warmed up and ready should it be needed for transmission. Try to judge the stopping place at a spot a few doors away from the actual location. The foot brake sends a glare from the taillights. Therefore, stop with the handbrake, but turn the brake to eliminate the ratchet sound. Loose objects that might rattle should be placed in the back pocket where they'll have less chance to move about. Close the door quietly. The task of flushing out a prowler is a step into the unknown. It is not a one-man job. Wait for the arrival of a partner. In the meantime, from a vantage point near the front of the house, watch for any movement between buildings. Especially observe the shadows, shrubbery, and other foliage. Once two officers have teamed, they immediately start the search. The first officer moves into the rear of the house for the initial shakedown, while the second officer takes a lookout position at the front corner of the house. From his station, the second officer can observe one side of the house and part of the backyard. He can also watch for any attempted flight from neighboring front yards, and he is in position to direct any additional units that might arrive on the scene. Avoid lighted backgrounds. A silhouette could offer a warning or even a target for the suspect. Proper use of the flashlight can mean the difference between success and failure in the search. The sudden flash of light in the darkness may force the suspect to make an impulsive move which may reveal his position, or he may be frightened into the open. However, he may attack instead of run, so be ready. To minimize the danger of exposing his position with the light, the officer holds it out to one side and slightly in front of his body. The advantage the light offers far outweighs any hazard involved in using it. Danger waits around every corner. Stay in close to the wall. Use every bit of protection available. Lead with the light and see what's there before moving out. While the search of the backyard continues, the partner at the front of the house keeps his vigil, watching yards and the street for any suspicious movement. Locks on doors leading to possible hiding places should be checked to assure that no entrance has been made. Once it is ascertained that there is no movement in the yard, a thorough investigation begins. First, the complainant should be interviewed. This serves to calm her with assurance that police are on the scene and allows the officers to obtain information regarding the description, action, and movements of the prowler. Determine especially if the prowler was actually seen by the victim. If he was, try to get a description of any unusual characteristics of dress or features. Remember that most victims are in a highly emotional state. Don't suggest points of identity. Let the victim give the description. The arrival of another unit, this time a two-man car, will allow a more rapid shakedown of the area. The officers take their positions immediately. One officer joins in the interrogation, while the other scans the area from the driveway. The new team is briefed, and pertinent points of the description are given to them. Here it was established that the suspect wore a baseball cap, a valuable identifying mark. Both teams of officers make notes of any information they might find useful in continuing the search. The second team of officers go now to conduct a search of the areas adjacent to the scene. With the victim somewhat calmed now, the officers can move in the area of the house without alarming her. The second team immediately transmits pertinent information to communications for broadcast to other units. The second search must be thorough. Each officer takes one side of the house and yard. This affords a rapid and efficient shakedown. Crawl holes and similar areas usually offer quick evidence if the suspect is hidden there. A check for broken spider webs or disturbance of dust layers can be made with quick efficiency. Evidence of flight provides confirmation of the prowler's existence and indicates his avenue of escape. Special care must be taken to preserve all evidence undisturbed for further scrutiny and analysis. Footprints and similar evidence may be used not only to determine direction of flight, but to obtain various factors of identification through detailed analysis should the case warrant it. The first officer has reached the rear of the house. Before proceeding further into the backyard, he waits for his partner to appear. The area near the window at which the victim reported seeing the prowler is observed by the officer and given special scrutiny. Both the ground below the window and the window itself should be studied. Here, the broken screen and finger smudges indicate an attempt entry, thus establishing the crime. Teamwork is the key to efficiency in this type of shakedown. For maximum safety, both officers must move along simultaneous parallel paths up each side of the yard. Therefore, one officer cannot move out ahead of his partner. They must wait, signal, then move. Prowlers are often canny and familiar with routine police methods. Unusual care in the search can provide the margin of success or failure in apprehension. Streets, alleys, and neighboring yards may yield signs of the suspect. Persons walking hurriedly or running, or vehicles starting hastily from the curb warrant investigation. Suspects hiding under parked cars can be observed in the headlight beam as the police car approaches. Some cars warrant closer scrutiny, such as this one with its windows rolled down. Scan inside the car and check the registration to determine if the car normally belongs in the neighborhood. If it is registered to an address outside that area, the hood should be felt to determine if the engine is warm. Garages and any other outbuildings are potential hiding places. In this instance, all accessible entrances to the garage have been checked and found to be locked from the outside. Before trampling a grassy lawn with his own footsteps, the officer uses his light to check for any evidence already there. If dew has already settled on the grass and a light is thrown across it at a low angle, footprints will appear as dark streaks in the moist lawn and indicate the direction of travel. The late hour and the circumstances of the case warrant stopping suspicious pedestrians in the area. Perspiration on the face should lead officers to further investigation. One officer holds the light while keeping his other hand ready for an emergency. His partner shakes down the suspect. First for weapons, then for evidence that might establish him as the prowler. Trouser cuffs should be checked for bits of shrubbery, twigs, and debris, and shoes for moisture from dew and mud. Even though no evidence is found, if a suspect is worth shaking down, he is worth making a report on. The surprise of sudden light may force the prowler to take refuge behind a tree trunk or bush. Trees, shrubbery, hedges, and other heavy vegetation must be thoroughly checked. An officer moving through the darkness should be wary of normal backyard obstacles. Low-hanging clotheslines can be injurious, as can sprinklers, hoses, or holes. Incinerators, barbecue pits, and rubbish barrels are all possible hiding places for the fleeing suspect. Should evidence lead an officer over a fence, he should ascertain what is on the other side before going over it. Debris or a change of ground level could bring injury. Roofs, especially on garages and similar buildings, must be checked. As the two officers reach the extreme ends of the yard, they cross according to plan, and each notifies the other of the evidence and pitfalls he has encountered. Now they exchange sides and move toward the front of the house again. Each will double-check the other's area. This minimizes the possibility that any detail will be overlooked. Simultaneously, the second unit broadens its search of adjacent areas. Even though the search of the yard has developed to a point of double-check now, vigilance to possible danger cannot be relaxed. Proper procedure should be followed. Lead with the light and keep the other hand ready for action. Evidence already scrutinized by one officer has been left intact for further study by his partner. Having searched the immediate area without success, and yet having absolute evidence that a prowler was on the premises, they now contact the victim. One officer makes the actual contact with the victim, while his partner takes up his original position of scrutiny at the side of the house. She is assured that a thorough search has been made and that further watch will be kept on the area. She is advised that if the prowler returns, she should keep the lights out and dial operator for police. Then wait quietly until officers arrive. The officers must make it apparent now that they are leaving the scene. This will reassure the suspect and help set up the stakeout. While being careful not to overplay their hand, the officers leave the area in much the opposite manner from the way they arrived. Noise and light may be as helpful now as silence and darkness were before. The officers must actually leave the scene to assure the suspect that it is safe to come out. Once away from the area, the officers advise communications of their intent to stake out the section. This assures them that other units will not inadvertently interfere.
Attention. This is to notify all units stakeout operation in progress in the area of the 2900 block, Westminster. All units are advised to stay clear.
After a few minutes, the officers return to their prearranged positions. The second officer takes a position at one end of the street, but out of the sight line of the victim's house and adjacent houses. He waits a moment, scanning the area for any suspicious movement. The first officer takes his position at the other end of the street. He will remain in his car throughout the stakeout and watch the area from that vantage point. Having observed no movement, the second officer leaves his car and takes his prearranged position behind some protecting object and out of sight of the street. Now the vigil begins. The suspect moves toward the officer in the car. His partner sends a prearranged signal. Careful, well-planned, and executed police work has paid off. Each Prowler Now call may yield something different. Be persistent. Consider the call serious and potentially dangerous. Use a safe speed and a silent and unobtrusive approach. Wait for a partner. Work as a team. Use the plan. A second officer takes his post at the front of the house. His partner immediately moves to the rear to flush that area. In the search, hold the flashlight to one side of the body and slightly in front to keep from becoming a direct target. Avoid any obstructions while making the search. Flush all hiding places, trees, shrubs, roofs, and even unlikely places. Officers should exchange searching areas to ensure more complete coverage. Failure to flush him out may necessitate a stakeout designed to lead the prowler into exposing himself. Now the night watch moves into the morning hours. The men of the watch await their next call, the next emergency. Around the officers of the watch, the people of the cities, the towns, and the villages sleep. They rest now, secure that in the streets beyond, efficient, well-trained officers are ever present. Protection surrounds them. Fear and doubt can give way to the peacefulness of sleep. The hours of the watch roll on.
Excuse me. Your business is selling merchandise, right?
Yes, it is.
That's right.
Yes, and merchandising is the way to do it. Appealing displays, easy to serve oneself. Want it.
Unfortunately, many customers take this serve yourself too literally. And about 1 of every 60 customers entering your store will want it so badly, they will attempt to steal it. The shoplifter knows the hand is quicker than the eye of an unobservant salesperson. It's the hands that do the stealing. The amateur shoplifter may steal because she can't resist an opportunity to get something for nothing, because of need, for the thrill of it, for luxuries, for psychological reasons. Shoplifters come from all economic levels. The most active days are Friday and Saturday. Opening and closing hours and lunch hour are choice times because that's when alertness by sales personnel is usually the lowest. But who steals, why, and when they steal makes little difference to the salesperson who does the most efficient job possible. Alertness and courtesy by you are the greatest deterrents to shoplifters. And it goes without saying that protecting your store's profits enhances your opportunity for salary increases. And it directly affects you as a customer in other stores, since shopping losses are added to the price of merchandise. Here you see actual footage of a professional shoplifter at work. She is about to commit a theft. No one in the supermarket knows what is taking place. She stacks these stakes neatly, too neatly. To an unobservant salesperson, she may appear to be an average housewife. But an alert salesperson will notice the large coat, full skirt, and big purse. These make for quick and easy concealment of merchandise. Notice how easily she slips the stakes under her dress, holding them between her legs. This is one of the many methods of boosting, the professional term for shoplifting. And it's the most common technique employed by the female pro. Given enough privacy, she can make off with portable television sets, typewriters, radios, tape recorders, and small appliances just as easily. She can steal items weighing as much as 25 pounds. She buys one or two inexpensive items to cover her presence in the store. It is folly for retail merchants to attempt to cut selling and operating costs by reducing the number of sales personnel. An adequate sales force ensures good customer service and is far less expensive than losses to shoplifters. What this shoplifter can steal in seconds will more than pay the daily wage of a good salesperson. By stealing cartons of cigarettes, this professional can easily earn $100 a day. She earns as much or more when working drug stores, clothing stores, hardware or discount stores. This woman represents a growing number of shoplifters who are taking advantage of the self-service store. The removal of barriers between goods and customers and the improved display techniques, which are psychologically designed to increase buying. Although the professional makes up only about 10% of those stealing from you, the dollar value of what they steal far exceeds that of the amateur shoplifter. Pros usually steal expensive items, later selling them for about half the retail price. The security chief of one large department store believes one professional shoplifter is more costly than 100 amateurs, while some store managers claim the small but frequent theft of the amateur is their greatest loss. Smaller stores can't afford security personnel, and boosters know it. They are also quick to recognize sales personnel working on commission, because a stall will usually send them scurrying to a hotter sales prospect. And that's what the shoplifter wants, privacy. But regardless of who is the greatest threat to store profits, the amateur or the professional, most shoplifters can be deterred by observant sales personnel who acknowledge all customers, letting no one go unrecognized. Personnel who treat everyone as a customer. This professional will be the first to admit that the presence of an observant, alert salesperson would have sent her away empty-handed. This is the merchandise she carried out of the store. However, she neglected to pay for these items. The average housewife does about 90% of her family shopping and more than 85% of the nation's shoplifting. She is a typical amateur shoplifter. She may feel your store owes her something, that such a small item won't be missed. Her purchase came to $13.50. Most supermarkets operate on a very low profit margin. The theft of a 99-cent item represents a substantial loss based on what this housewife purchased. And she'll probably be back tomorrow or the next day. Don't allow empty cartons to accumulate in the front of your store. Many a request for what you think is an empty box has been prompted by the knowledge that it has been filled with your merchandise by an accomplice. Men also pull this trick, stuffing meat, cigarettes, or other items down their trousers and covering it with their shirt. Placing tags inside the wrapping can eliminate much of this. Switching containers, putting expensive items into cartons formerly containing inexpensive items is a popular trick. An alert cashier will notice all tears and broken seals. It's easy to slip items under her knitting. Beware of customers bringing bags, boxes, or any large container into your store. No, these slacks weren't exactly what she wanted. The green ones are. Use the check system. Make sure everything is returned. This woman gambles that a bag from another store will not be searched. It's better for the purse to be too large than too small. Wearing a rain cape on a sunny day should arouse your interest. Some shoplifters don't always hide their thefts. They merely exchange their old for your new. Here's a happy customer. Happy that the clerk wasn't alert. Didn't check inside the cooler. Unpackaged clothing should always be checked. One clerk didn't take the time. Switching pinned-on tags and tied tags gets this shopper a $25 coat for $13. Knowing your merchandise will curb this theft technique. With the aid of this clever booster box, only 2 seconds are needed to steal an expensive camera. Here is another type of booster box. It's carried by the shoplifter for the convenience of his companion. Not all packages are what they seem to be. The cleverly arranged ribbons conceal the opening in this box. Many service areas provide supervised checking facilities for their customers' convenience and for their own protection. Professionals often work in pairs. No one could be more casual than this customer, despite all the activity going on behind her. She is the shield. Often a hidden zipper allows a lifter to do her own stuffing while the partner acts as a lookout. Here is a shoplifter making her selection while her companion serves as lookout. The chosen dress is placed under her arm temporarily. She doesn't plan to carry it out. She'll wear it.
Sorry, these won't do.
That's right. She's wearing the stolen dress under her own. Clothing left in fitting rooms is easy pickings for shoplifters who just wear them over or under their own clothes. Check fitting rooms frequently for merchandise left inside. This man appears interested in a suit. His companion is even more interested. Female boosters can take 3 or 4 suits, including hangers, in one motion, holding them between their legs with comparative ease. Sometimes a partner will enter the store first, select the suits to be stolen, and put them on the end of the rack for easy identification by the confederate who will do the stealing. If a professional shoplifter can get an item between her legs without you seeing that item, she can steal it. This method can be used in any store to steal almost any item. Articles displayed on the counter's edge are easily stolen. An observant sales clerk would notice the clothing difference between mother and child, raincoat and sunsuit. This man had a profitable day. It's good merchandising to display as few articles on the counter as possible. A booster would hesitate to take a loan item since it would immediately be missed and draw attention to his presence. On a rainy day, this shoplifter simply palms the tag and walks out of the store. Stealing larger items requires more self-possession. It is estimated that 1 of every 60 customers to enter your store tomorrow will try to steal something. The key to defeating this rising tide of shoplifting lies with you, the observant store employee. Even the cleverest shoplifter cannot steal from you if you realize that quick, courteous service to customers is your primary function. Police and retail security reports reveal that the most effective solution to shoplifting is the prevention of the theft. To steal from you and your store, the shoplifter must have 2 favorable conditions: merchandise to steal and privacy to steal it. Since you are in the business to sell merchandise, you must display your wares. The stress, therefore, must be on the reduction of the shoplifter's sense of privacy. You can do this by doing the best job of selling you can. Quickly acknowledge and serve all customers, even if you feel they are not ready to buy. Convex mirrors, peepholes, and observation points also eliminate the shoplifter's sense of privacy. But 100 observation points, closed-circuit television cameras, and other electronic devices cannot compensate for good salespeople who are aware of everything going on around them. These devices contribute to the shoplifter's feeling that they are being watched. But when a shoplifter spots an alert salesperson, they know they're being watched. Service to customers is everything in your job. It not only increases sales, but decreases shoplifting. If you treat everyone as a customer, you will have performed your duty as an efficient, courteous salesperson. And if they are a shoplifter, you have prevented a theft. An adequate number of salespeople during busy hours ensures prompt service and prevents mass shoplifting. A uniformed guard patrolling your aisles is also a strong deterrent to stealing. Other shoplifting preventatives include elevated sales stations for complete surveillance and therefore maximum control over your merchandise. Adequate lighting and low displays permit greater visibility. Shoplifters develop patterns for stealing. For example, a shoplifter never keeps his eyes on the merchandise. He watches you and the customers around him, waiting for that moment of privacy when he can steal. Beware of loose coats. They can conceal countless types of items. Alertness on your part is the strongest preventative to shoplifting. Awareness of all customers. Knowledge of your merchandise. Serve all of your customers as quickly as possible. Even if you are busy with one customer, immediately acknowledge new customers.
I'll be with you in a moment, sir.
To a customer, those words mean courtesy. To a shoplifter, it means, I'm watching you. Never leave your section unattended. And for customers who are just looking, keep them and the merchandise in sight.
May I help you with that tow rope?
Asking this question is courteous. It also deters a shoplifter. Valuable items should be displayed out of reach. Stacks of merchandise left in stairwells, freight elevators, halls, and in the shopping area are easy prey for shoplifters. After restocking departments, all merchandise should be returned immediately to the stockroom. This is a popular trick for stealing popular records. You can lose hundreds of records and other items to the magazine fan. Or you can save hundreds of records by putting them out of reach, behind glass, as this security-conscious department store did. Not all book-carrying customers are avid readers. A shoplifter has struck. Don't allow empty hangers on racks.
You're here to sell things, not to get personal. Someone ought to teach you your manners. I'm going to report you to the manager.
Any distraction that draws off the sales clerk may offer an opportunity for a new shoplifter to be created. If you see someone take something, the best policy is usually to make no attempt to apprehend the suspect or accuse them of shoplifting. Get a physical description, their outstanding characteristics, their dress. If possible, keep the suspect in view while notifying your superior. Your obligation may end with getting an accurate physical description and alerting your designated authority, depending upon your store's policy. You, the salesperson, can defeat shoplifting by being alert, observant, courteous, and devoting yourself to doing the best sales job you can.
The long night is ended, and the chill air that lingered with the darkness begins to give way to the first warm rays of sunshine. Alarm clocks, shrill and piercing, greet the arrival of the dawn. The city awakens, and a new day begins. In their separate ways, the thousands that inhabit the city begin life afresh. For the police, the morning hours mark the beginning of the day watch. During daylight hours, approximately 40% of all demand for police service occurs. Primarily, these calls are of routine nature. However, the call could be serious. With this in mind, the officers of the day watch go out into the awakening city. Somewhere in this mass of humans, there are careless drivers, traffic violators, felons, dangerous neurotics, and honest, sincere citizens. Some of these people will meet with the officers of the watch before the day is ended. For what must an officer be prepared? Certainly one of the most common yet complex problems this officer will have to face is this: how to stop that car. The siren is seldom used to stop a traffic violator unless the situation demands the immediate use of the highway. The move is now made to effect the stop. As he nears the suspect's car, he must be prepared. No vehicle stops are routine. This may be a traffic violator, nothing more. It may also be the last violator he ever stops. The police car is brought to a position at the left rear of the violator, causing him to look back at you. Watch for sudden stops. His attention may be had by short blasts on the horn. As the suspect obeys the command, the police car is brought into position. Note the position of the police car, approximately 8 feet behind the suspect's car and offset about 3 feet farther to the left. Communications should be notified as to location, activity, and license number before the officer exposes himself to possible danger. A written record of the violator's license is made. This will assist later investigation should any unforeseen injury come to the officer. As a final precaution, the officer removes the keys from his car. Who is waiting inside the protective shell of that car? Felon, neurotic, dangerous, and erratic? Or plain citizen, docile and resigned? At this moment, there is no answer. Only potential danger for the officer. Having parked slightly to the left of the suspect's car, the officer has provided himself with a safety zone along which he can walk. In this way, he is protected from traffic from the rear, and he can focus his full attention on the violator. The officer must use every opportunity to observe the violator. A suspicious move might be seen from this angle and afford the officer the needed time to act. In taking a position to question the violator, stand to the rear of the violator's front door. This forces the violator to turn and look at you, placing him at an added disadvantage. The fact that nothing suspicious has been observed yet does not eliminate the potential danger. A casual readiness may still provide the margin of life and death. Alert observation should continue throughout the interrogation. And don't be misled by charm. Constant observation sometimes yields surprises. like this rather large supply of checkbooks. No, not the wallet, just the driver's license. The overabundance of credit cards should further arouse the officer's suspicions. Without alarming the violator, any suspicions can quickly be checked. A want can be run in about the same time it takes to write a traffic citation.
Unit 605. Suspect has a felony record and is wanted for forgery.
The lady's collection of checkbooks and credit cards is no coincidence. She is wanted on several counts of forgery. A traffic violation results in the capture of a wanted suspect, simply on the basis of careful observation. The watch moves into its final hours. But for the officers on duty, new problems can arise in minutes. And in terms of minutes, the remainder of the watch is long. Within minutes after the robbery, all units are alerted. A description of the car and the license number are broadcast, along with the crime for which the suspects are wanted. Immediate note is made on the car and suspects by the patrol officer. The officer proceeds immediately to an intersection leading from the scene of the robbery. There is no doubt as to what to expect if this car is stopped. 1 officer and 4 felony suspects. The odds are stacked too high against the officer here. He must rely on his partner, the Mike. Following the suspects at a practical distance, giving exact position, direction, and speed. A knowledge of the area is important now. There may not be time to look for street signs. A well-lighted and populated district is preferable. When the officer has selected the area, he should transmit it as far ahead of time as possible, and then place the mic in a readily available location. This will allow other units time to move into position and lend assistance. If trailed too long, the suspects may become suspicious and attempt to outrun the pursuing car. The siren here is a psychological advantage. The moment the car is stopped, the officer immediately commands the situation.
Turn your motor off and throw your keys out of the car.
This eliminates an escape potential.
Keep your hands in sight. No, not up. In sight.
Hands up could have been a fatal order.
42754.
The men in the front seat are told to place their hands on the windshield, palms up. Those in the rear seat are ordered to put their hands on top of the front seat, palms up. Even though they are stopped, the officer should not attempt to effect the arrest beyond this point alone. His advantage is in his position. He should wait for help. The second officer takes a position at the right rear of the suspect's car. When he is in position, the officer taps the car and makes enough noise to let them know that more than one officer is present. He should keep a close surveillance on the suspects through the rear window. Now the suspects are ordered from their car. They must get out one at a time on the right side in specific order. First, the man in the right rear. The second officer controls the suspect as he gets out of the car.
Put your hands behind your head.
The suspect is directed to kneel and then cross his legs. The suspect in the left rear is then ordered out accordingly. The man in the right front is given the same commands. The second officer maintains control of the suspect as they are positioned. Finally, the driver is ordered to take a position beside the others. The first officer moves in to assist the search. He checks the vehicle to determine if there are hidden suspects. Throughout this procedure, avenues of escape must be covered by the officers, and at the same time, they must avoid coming into direct line of fire with each other. Officer 2 moves into the search position. He places his right hand on the suspect's shoulder. His left locks the hands. By pulling the hands back and arching the suspect's spine with his right knee, the officer draws the suspect off balance. In this position, he can effectively complete the search of the right side. The officer moves to the left side of the suspect, again takes his position of advantage. Then he completes his search by placing the suspect on his stomach. The weapon found by the officer is placed at the guard officer's feet, well out of reach of the suspects. By following the same procedure with the others, the search is completed with a minimum of danger, and 4 armed felony suspects have been safely stopped by a single officer who complied with sound training procedures. The day watch comes to an end. A host of problems faced and solved. What are the procedures that made the day successful? Approach any car with caution. Carefully observe the suspect and car before reaching the window. During the interrogation, stand to the rear of the driver's door. This places the suspect off balance. Be alert, courteous, and businesslike. Broadcast intended pullover location. A lone officer remains behind the door of his vehicle until assistance arrives. The second officer is located at the right rear of the suspect's car, where he can easily observe the occupants. A firm grip on the suspect's hands prevents offensive actions. Remember, the shotgun is an effective weapon. The objective is your safety and control of the suspect. Yes, the officers of the day watch will go home to their families. For them, the day is over. The challenges have been met through good training and common sense. And, it can be added, a job well done.
A major enforcement problem in this vast nation built on automotive transportation. For the enforcement officer, vigilance for hot cars is an important part of his tour of duty. Yet the task is not an easy one. There was a time when auto theft was a relatively minor problem. But with better roads came increased automotive production and an ever-increasing enforcement task. Today, the thief's opportunities are seemingly unlimited. The enforcement problem is staggering. Motives for thefts range from juvenile whim, a joyride, to the professional operating an enormous illegal business. Rate of recovery is certainly lower when the crime is committed by this latter group. Professional rings function smoothly and efficiently to transform the identity of the stolen car beyond recognition even by the owner. Operating in production line fashion, they work to change every possible detail of the car. Even the tires are changed in the swift facelifting. Accessories are changed or added. No detail is considered too minute. The engine number, considered the identifying birthmark of every car, is ground off, and a new one is stamped in the metal. This change can be detected by the well-trained eye, for which telltale signs remain. But the casual observer would not readily see the traces that remain after grinding. The serial number, different from the engine number, is usually attached on a plate. This means of identification is easily changed by substituting a new plate. The big job is changing the entire color of the car. With this, the stolen vehicle is ready for sale on the market without fear of immediate detection. In the enormous flow of traffic that an officer encounters each day, the stolen car blends with natural camouflage. But for the well-trained officer, the camouflage is not perfect. There are signs, characteristics which mark the hot car, single it out from the hundreds of other cars which the officer sees. The most important single factor in the detection of stolen vehicles is an accurate hot sheet. Before leaving for his tour of duty, the officer brought his list up to the minute with the latest write-ins available. Throughout the day, he will bring the sheet current by adding additional numbers received by radio. It is essential, too, that he remove numbers as they are reported recovered. The hot sheet should be kept in a prominent place where it can be quickly and easily referred to. Most vehicles are stolen for some temporary transportation. Often it is for a joyride, usually by 2 or more persons. Or it may have been intended for use as a getaway car in the commission of another crime. In any event, the thief is often careless with the property that is not his. Sometimes he is nervous, and this is reflected in his driving. In view of these considerations, the car thief is prone to violation of traffic laws. An officer should check this possibility in the course of apprehending a violator. The officer parks his vehicle behind the suspect's car and slightly offset to the left to provide a safety lane during the investigation. Approaching any vehicle is a potential danger. Before exposing himself, the officer notifies communications of his position and intended action. The officer checks the violator's license number against the hot sheet. It is not listed. As a final precaution, he makes a written record of the violator's license number. Keep a constant watch on the occupants of any vehicle when making the approach. A quick glance assures the officer that there are no passengers. But now, even though the car is not listed as being stolen, the officer's attention is again drawn to the possibility of theft by the inconsistent appearance of the driver and the car. Certainly, this driver does not fit the conservative car he is driving. The first step, get the operator's license. Along with his questions regarding the traffic violation, the officer includes subtle inquiries to check out his suspicion of possible theft. The driver claims his father is the owner of the car. Yet, when asked for the registration slip, he must look on the steering column to learn that it is not there. One familiar with the car would generally know where the slip is kept. There is no registration available in this case. The inconsistencies of driver and car increase, and the officer decides to investigate further. He asks for the keys, thus immobilizing the vehicle. The evidence is not conclusive, and the officer continues a courteous relationship. But any officer, especially one working alone, must not expose himself to unnecessary danger. A quick check for weapons is not an accusation, but a precaution. There is a chance of an error or omission on the officer's hot sheet, or a chance that the car has been recently stolen, but no broadcast has as yet been made. To be sure, the officer requests a want run on both driver and vehicle. Where a partner is available, the second officer would hold the suspect out of hearing. A single officer must sacrifice this subtlety to keep his suspect under surveillance. The officer comments that while riding up behind the violator, he noticed the rear end seemed heavy. He asks, "What is in the trunk?" This was an unexpected question. The driver replies that it is piled with boxes of things belonging to his father. Calmly, politely, the officer asks to inspect the contents of the trunk. The suspect's every move must be closely watched now. If he is guilty, he can incriminate himself in these moments. There are several keys from which he must choose to unlock the trunk. His degree of certainty and his accuracy in selecting the right key should be noted. No pile of boxes, as the driver said there was. He is quick to cover himself, suggesting that his father removed them without his knowing about it. Suspicion is mounting, but not yet conclusive. However, there are other checkpoints to be tried. The questions are fed out carefully, courteously. How long has the family had the car? Have they driven it much? How many miles does the speedometer show? The speedometer mileage reading is a figure most people who drive a car frequently know within a reasonable margin. But it is a detail not usually noted by someone who steals a car. This driver is caught in a position where he cannot observe the speedometer. He feels compelled to give an answer and offers his estimate of 16,000 miles. There are other details about which an owner is usually familiar. The last date of lubrication, the contents of the glove compartment, the position of controls, light switches, map lights, or other items. A check is made on the actual mileage. The figure is over 8,000 miles different from that given by the driver.
There is no want on your suspect. No want on the car.
In custody, the suspect admits that he stole the car, but adds that he only meant to borrow it for a few hours. This is a familiar story in car theft. Thus, an officer's close attention to details, his ability to size up the elements of a possible hot car, and his careful investigation have brought about recovery of the car and apprehension of the suspect, even before the vehicle was reported stolen. Stolen cars are usually taken for a single purpose, used and then abandoned. They are often left in secluded areas, dead ends, or streets without houses facing them. These are places where the thief might leave the car with a minimum danger of being observed. Certainly, the parked cars that an officer can investigate are limited. Therefore, it is important that he be skilled in sizing up a parked vehicle and determining if it is possibly a hot car. Debris scattered in and around this car indicates that it has been parked in the same spot for several days. A quick check reveals that the license number does appear on the hot sheet. Communications is notified. Cross files can quickly fill in details not usually listed on the hot sheet. This also prevents errors being committed because of inaccuracies on the sheet.
Unit 1-5. On George Charlie King 710, 1955 Chevrolet 4-door sedan. Registered to Warren Light, 819 Walnut Street, Torrance.
The obvious discrepancy between the vehicle wanted and the car which now carries the hot license must be clarified by further investigation. A search inside for registration or other identification should be made with care not to disturb fingerprints or any evidence that might be needed for follow-up investigation. Stolen cars are often used for getaway in the commission of robbery and other crimes. No registration is found, but details continue to point up to the experienced officer that this might be a stolen car. Despite the possibility of rain, the windows have been left open. The dirty condition of the windshield and the car in general show a lack of concern that is more in keeping with the attitude of a thief than that of an owner. Motor and serial numbers are difficult to alter, and they usually provide fairly conclusive evidence as to whether or not a car is hot. These numbers are usually caked with dirt and grease, and an officer should be prepared to meet this situation by keeping a brush or knife on hand to scrape it clean. Be familiar with the location of numbers on each type of engine. Care should be taken not to confuse the motor number with the part number. Part numbers are a raised portion of the casting, while motor numbers are stamped into the metal. A routine check should be made to determine if the trunk is unlocked, and if so, it should be searched. Having obtained the motor number, the officer radios it to communication. It can be readily determined from cross files if the car itself is listed as stolen. In this case, the car is found to be hot. The situation is complicated by the fact that it bears plates from another vehicle, also listed as stolen. But by his skilled investigation, this officer has straightened out the confusion with little delay. For although the thief has fled from the car, the recovery by officers is the beginning of an investigation and pursuit that may lead to his capture. A resident of the neighborhood is questioned about the car and will be used in the follow-up investigation. But the enforcement problem on hot cars continues throughout each watch, through every minute of the day. For even as a number is being scratched from the hot sheet, another may be in the process of becoming an entry. Unlike the amateur or a juvenile stealing for a thrill or joyride, the professional car thief moves with a swift, well-planned operation. Narrowing the chance of detection with a lookout, he devotes his full attention to the car. Each step is practiced and planned. With the door locked, he tries the window to force down that fraction of an inch that can sometimes be obtained from play in the mechanism. Failing this, he moves to the side vent. The professional makes and carries the tools of his trade. They are designed by him to defeat the various locks that confront him on any make of car. He tries always the quickest path. This special tool is designed to hook on the door handle so that the door can be flicked open. The angle is bad. No further time is wasted. Another tool is chosen. This one fits neatly over the window handle and is designed to allow the circular turning pressure to be applied. With the vent open, entrance is easy. The gear lever is set in neutral or start position. With the same swift, sure action, the thief moves to the engine. He has no ignition keys to help him now, and like a magician, he deftly turns to his pocket full of tricks. Here, a jump wire is attached between the battery and the coil. The circuit is completed, and the engine turns over. It should be remembered that the thief has no way of turning off the engine except by disconnecting the jump wires. But for his immediate purpose, the car will function, and it is his. The new candidate for the hot sheet moves in among the mass of other cars that fill the city streets. To single out this one car from the others requires a high degree of skill and is a difficult enforcement problem. The professional thief has means to complicate the enforcement task. License plates can be altered with either paint or tape. Certain numbers and letters are usually chosen because of the ease with which a change can be made. Here, a 3 is skillfully transformed into an 8. And with deft fingers, the letter L quickly becomes an E. When observing a suspicious vehicle whose license number does not appear on the hot sheet, an officer should consider the number with an eye focused on a possible alteration. At night, thieves sometimes try to prevent a clear observation of the plate by smashing the light which illuminates it. To an experienced officer, this ruse should only arouse suspicion and call for closer inspection of the plate. It is obvious that the officer who, along with his other duties, keeps a constant vigil for stolen vehicles cannot rely solely on his hot sheet. He must be aware of other clues that point out the stolen car. Drivers who appear nervous or unfamiliar with their car warrant attention. Suspicious physical damage, broken vents or windows are signs of possible forced entry. Here, the driver is uneasy, but aggressive rather than timid.
Your rear tire's low.
This attempt to divert attention alerts the experienced officer. He has seen this ruse before. The altered plates could easily pass a casual look, but the officer gives them close scrutiny. He detects an alteration. Typically, the thief turns off from the officer's route at the first opportunity. His suspicion aroused, the officer attempts a pullover. In the fear that they had been detected, the thieves attempt to get away. The officer notifies communications of the pursuit so that other units may be brought in. Holding the mic to his throat cuts down the siren noise. With this call, he can receive an emergency verification on the want listed on the car. Car thieves are not concerned with potential damage to the car, and they usually have little regard for others on the roadway. Their whole purpose is escape at any cost. They sometimes commit hit-and-run accidents. They take enormous chances in their flight. The officer is responsible for the safety of others as well as his vehicle. He is therefore at a disadvantage, even though using red light and siren against the wild and careless driver of the hot car. By knowing the terrain, the officer has trapped the suspect before other units reach the scene. He orders both men to place their hands on the windshield and radios his exact position. He will not attempt to effect the capture beyond this point without a partner, since his advantage now is in his position. But by his knowledge of the behavior of car thieves and his skilled attention to details, he has defeated even the well-laid plans of professionals. In our nation of automotive transportation, car theft continues year after year as one of the country's major criminal problems. It follows, therefore, that every enforcement officer must be thoroughly familiar with the details of this criminal activity. This means an ability to recognize the behavior characteristics of the car thief, either amateur or professional, as well as a complete understanding of the tools of this illicit trade. An officer must be able to recognize the professional's tools, know their function and their purpose. One of the most important pieces of equipment is that used to short out the ignition system so that the car will function without keys. This coil, or hotshot as it's called, is a common tool used by car thieves. Sometimes equipment is more elaborate. This instrument seems innocent enough in its cigar box package. But the terminal wires dangling outside lead into a coil that can be quickly engaged by deft hands. Once in place, this coil will soon add another number to the already long list on the hot sheet. Professionals often design their own jimmies, like this one made from a spoon handle. In some cases, two tools are needed in combination to force open the lock. Here, the lock button is depressed with one tool, while the heavy-duty jimmy works to twist the lock arm out of the lock position. The thief soon becomes familiar with each type of lock, and he faces each one in an almost routine fashion. using his special tools with skilled and practiced fingers. He works quickly but patiently toward that moment when his hand touches the door handle. However, car theft is a many-sided problem. When committed by highly organized professionals, enforcement must be carried to equally extensive investigation to lead toward detection and apprehension. But the major portion of auto thefts are not committed by such professionals. Amateurs and lesser professionals account for keeping this crime among our nation's prime enforcement tasks. Efficient performance of this task depends upon every officer's ability to know and recognize the highly skilled and sometimes extremely minute points of detection. Thus, as another number is scratched from the hot sheet, there is behind that single stroke of the pencil a job of law enforcement worthy of pride, a job well planned, well executed, and well done.
In one sense, you might say a room is like a field investigation report or a booking sheet. But unfortunately, the information isn't typed clearly on the form, waiting to be read. The evidence you're looking for is here, all right. But it has to be located before you can read it. And it has to be read with specially trained eyes. For example, inexperienced eyes would probably overlook the valid evidence of marijuana and hashish use that are apparent on this coffee table. But in the law of evidence, you can't guess. You have to be sure. Ashtrays, being open to view and easy of access, are logical places to use your eyes for evidence of marijuana violations. And the logical evidence to look for is a partly consumed marijuana cigarette. Marijuana cigarettes are called joints. One that has been partly smoked is called a roach. There are some noticeable differences between a marijuana or grass joint and the butt of an ordinary cigarette. Note the burned end of the ordinary cigarette. Cigarette tobacco contains a burning agent that keeps the tobacco ignited and burning smoothly. Result, fine gray ash and an evenly burned end. Marijuana has no such burning agent mixed with it. Therefore, it's hard to keep lit. It burns unevenly and generally ends up as a scorched, irregularly burned butt. Note this burned hot spot in the paper. Unrefined marijuana, called unmanicured, often contains seeds. Marijuana seeds burn very hot, often exploding like tiny bombs through the paper. These bomb craters are clearly visible even at a distance to those who use their eyes. Machine-made cigarettes are generally round, or in any case, they're uniform in shape. Cigarette paper is very thin, and all commercial cigarettes are wrapped in single paper. Commercial cigarette tobacco filaments are uniform in size and finely shredded, soft and pliable in texture. Marijuana joints, being handmade, are seldom perfectly round or uniform in size with respect to each other. Inside, the grass, even if manicured, which this is not finely shredded, but contains small, irregular lengths of stalks and stems, and, as we said, seeds. Use your eyes to look for partially consumed marijuana roaches. They are prima facie evidence that the premises are being used for an illegal purpose. And this brings up an important legal point. Unless an officer has in hand or observes such positive evidence, he cannot legally look any further, not even to find out what else this ashtray may contain. But if he uses his eyes and sees such evidence, like this roach, for example, he can legally continue his investigation, which is what we now propose to do. It would be very helpful to an investigating officer if all the distracting evidence of ordinary living could be removed, leaving only the evidence he is looking for concentrated conveniently in one place. Don't get the idea an investigation ever is this easy. We're just using a little camera magic here to make it easier to find the evidence we're looking for. This hair clip may or may not be prima facie evidence of marijuana use. You have to use your eyes and your understanding of legal evidence to find out. This is an item you might find anywhere in a residence, on the floor, on a coffee table, under a sofa seat, anywhere. And this one is not evidence of marijuana use. But this one is. What's the difference between them? Well, use your eyes and you'll see. Take a careful look at the end. See that burned tip? That's what you're looking for. Metal clips are commonly used to hold marijuana cigarettes for smoking. The shorter the roach becomes, the harder it is to keep lit. Frequent lighting and the heat of the burning marijuana, which is 5 or 6 times as hot as tobacco, leaves heat marking or burns on the metal of the roach clip. The unmarked clip is just a woman's hair clip, but under the law of evidence, the burn mark on the other clip changes it into an item of marijuana paraphernalia, which gives an investigating officer the legal right to look for additional evidence. This alligator clip, for example, is a perfectly legal item of hardware. This one, scorched at the tip, is an item of marijuana paraphernalia. This bobby pin is legal in any home. This one, with a roach fragment stuck to it, is a prima facie item of marijuana paraphernalia. Such solid legal evidence justifies further search, or the issuance of a search warrant, or would sustain a marijuana use case in court. Don't overlook the floor, or the rugs around sofas and chairs in your search for evidence. Marijuana seeds have a tendency to explode or pop out of the joint and fall to the floor. This seed, obviously, is further undisputable proof that marijuana has been used recently in this room. This, obviously, is a cigarette box, and it might as well be padlocked as far as an investigating officer's right to lift the lid is concerned. Unless, that is, evidence has already been found that marijuana has been or is being used in the room. Since this investigation has already revealed a half-smoked joint, plus assorted burned clips and a bobby pin with a roach still in it, the officer has a legal right to open the box and see what it contains. Untrained eyes would see nothing but ordinary, perfectly legal cigarettes. But not so fast. Let's use our eyes. Here's some very important evidence to reinforce the previous evidence of the half-smoked marijuana joint. Zigzag brand cigarette papers. A police lab test will confirm that this paper is identical to the paper the joints and roaches were rolled in. It is perfectly legal to have any kind of tobacco cigarettes in the home, but not a marijuana cigarette, nor a supply of marijuana in a plastic bag, commonly called a lid. This, of course, is marijuana itself, the best evidence of all. It has distinctive characteristics. Learn them. Use your eyes. It also has a distinctive aroma, so use your nose as well as your eyes. Marijuana has a sweet, musty odor that is easy to identify. Knowing this, pot smokers often try to hide the telltale fragrance of grass smoke by burning incense in the room. Therefore, the presence of incense or incense burners in a room should be noted. This is what manicured marijuana looks like. That is, the stalks, stems, and seeds have been removed. Bulk users or pushers of unmanicured marijuana buy it in compressed blocks weighing about a kilo or kilogram. That's about 2 2/10 pounds. Unmanicured marijuana is almost too coarse and rough to be rolled into cigarettes. Consequently, it is either smoked in pipes or manicured to remove the stems, stalks, and the seeds. The custom is to refine the kilo of natural grass by rough stirring or pounding to separate the stems and seeds from the leaves. The refined or manicured grass is then removed for packaging. This leaves only the coarse stems, stalks, and seeds, which have very little, if any, narcotic value. They are generally thrown away. The refined or manicured grass is then packaged into lids, each of which contains enough marijuana to make 30 or 40 joints or marijuana cigarettes. Baggies from the supermarket are almost exclusively used today to package lids of pot. When marijuana is smoked in a pipe, this is not the kind of pipe that is generally used. So an ordinary pipe collection does not necessarily indicate that marijuana is being smoked on the premises. But this kind of pipe justifies immediate suspicion and close inspection. The area for close inspection is the bowl. Two things should be looked for. One is evidence of repeated heating on the outside. But more important is marijuana residue on the inside of the bowl. A police chemical laboratory report will positively establish that even this minute smudge is marijuana residue. This kind of pipe, called a water pipe, is also used by marijuana smokers. They come in many sizes and shapes, including the large one in the center of the table, which enables 4 people to smoke marijuana at one time. The hot smoke is cooled by contact with the surface of the water before it is inhaled by the smoker. As a matter of fact, once marijuana use has been established, every kind of humidor or container that looks suspicious should be closely inspected for marijuana residue. This is a $100 block of hashish, a stumbling block that may trip unsuspecting marijuana smokers and send them tumbling into the horrors of hard narcotic addiction. Imported from narcotics-producing nations abroad, this concentrated, mind-warping substance is, by volume, 8 to 10 times as potent as marijuana grass. Hashish does not burn like tobacco. It smolders slowly like 4th of July punk when lighted. Consequently, a very small amount will get a smoker very high and keep him that way for a long time. What's a small square of tinfoil doing here? Strange as it may seem, such squares of foil are strong evidence that hashish is being smoked on the premises. Only educated eyes would recognize this bored wooden block as prima facie evidence of hashish smoking. Here's how it works. The tinfoil is pressed into the small bored hole in the homemade pipe to protect the wood from the heat. Then the foil is punctured to let smoke pass through. A small load of hashish is pressed into the tinfoil and lit. And another potential narcotics victim floats out of the world of reality toward a midnight of eventual regret and despair. So, no matter how or for what reason, in the day-to-day conduct of your police duties, you are called to investigate a residential situation, use your eyes.
How could they bust Goody Two-Shoes Charlie for anything?
Look at the cannon.
Wow, you can't even walk down the street without the man rousting you, man. Ah, the cop's out of pound sand.
I wonder what kind of guy would want to be a cop anyway.
Bill Bryan.
Okay.
I think we can fix this for you, honey. Okay?
A police officer must be part priest, part psychiatrist, part social worker, part karate expert, and he must be able to make a decision in a few seconds that will stand up before complex legal scrutiny all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Dad, we're gonna be late.
Well, I'll tell you, old man, if you come over here and help me, we'll be through in half the time.
True enough. But there's more to be said. Take Bill Bryan, a family man like most of his fellow officers, and like all fathers, he's expected to be able to remedy any calamity, to fix just about anything. Certainly his daughter is convinced of that. Officer Bryan firmly believes that athletics is one of the best ways to teach and build discipline. That discipline which is so essential for young people to learn before they're faced with the responsibilities of adulthood. For that reason, Bill Bryan finds time from his own scant time off to act as a coach for his son's team. Officer Bryan and his partner Williams are part of a team whose members must not only be well-trained soldiers, but also act as street corner sociologists. Someday the public in America will realize that the police officer has more to do with the state of our nation than any other man on the street today.
A55-10-8, Unit 577, Williams and Bryan.
1A55, roger.
The first call is not long in coming.
1A55, 488 suspect in custody at 10712 Washington Boulevard at the dress shop.
A girl, 16 years old, is accused of shoplifting, a polite word for stealing. The manager had seen her go into the dressing room with 4 swimsuits and come out with only 2. She waited until the girl left the store and stopped her outside. The girl had returned the swimsuits as soon as she was accused and now thought she'd paid her debt. And, of course, her girlfriends were providing all the moral support.
Do you want to press charges against this young lady?
You bet your life I want to press charges. If I don't, she'll be back here again next week. If not this shop, one down the street.
I'm sorry, miss, but you're going to have to come down to the station with us.
You really want blood, don't you, lady? I gave you back your crummy swimsuits. You think I was a criminal or something. I have my rights. I want a lawyer. I'm a juvenile. You can't touch me.
The manager is right. You can't cure people of stealing by turning them loose. But once a shoplifter has been formally arrested, he seldom commits the crime again. This young lady may learn that stealing is the most expensive way of acquiring anything. It may mean a criminal record that can never be erased. Call follows call. Bryan and his partner Williams respond. A woman reports an attempted burglary. Returning from a shopping trip to the market, she surprised a man trying to get into her house in full daylight. And to prove her story to the officer, she shows him the fingerprints on the windowsill. This case will have to be handled by the detective division. A drunk driver who got into trouble going the wrong way on a one-way street is given the field sobriety test. is obviously intoxicated and very antagonistic. When it becomes necessary to subdue the suspect, Brian is acutely aware of the spectators. He knows their all too frequent reaction. If he lets the suspect hit him, they'll call him a coward. If he has to hit the suspect, he's a brutal bully. This creek bed is one of the most dangerous areas in town for children to play, even in the daytime. The city has fenced the whole area off, but it just seems to add that much more challenge to the young adventurer. The officers know only too well the many possible dangers that may be waiting in the dark for a child alone. The boy says he was just taking a shortcut. Brian decides he had better see the boy safely home. A young boy out at this time of night in an undesirable part of town is a prime target for the child molester. We read in the paper every day where innocent children, not given the proper guidance, have become victims of these sick minds. But parents continue to believe it always happens to the other guy. The boy's father wants to know what it's all about. And Brian tells him that as a parent, he should always know where his son is and what he's doing. Perhaps Officer Brian is overstepping his authority a bit, but the boy is so very much like his own. The call over the radio said 2 men were reported to be suspiciously loitering. That can mean anything. Midnight Auto Supply. They start out with hubcaps as kids and graduate to radios and stereo tapes, and soon find it easier and quicker just to take the whole car. Wears on, and like every other night, Bill Bryan and his partner respond to call after call.
Good evening. What seems to be the problem here?
The young police officers are asked to solve many of society's ills. Domestic problems and quarrels account for a large portion of their calls. And many times they're called upon on the spot to settle the domestic differences of couples many years their senior. More often than not, the heat of the dispute is over by the time the officers arrive, and the offended marriage partner declines to press charges.
No, I don't think so.
And domestic peace and tranquility reign once again.
My husband has a friend on the city council, and I'm sure that we can do something about this. I want your name and I want your badge number because I'm going to have you reported.
Brian listens and Williams looks. Even though a lot of prowlers are heard but not seen, and are probably cats or just the wind blowing, they nevertheless thoroughly investigate every report.
Where have you been? I've been calling the police station. I called them 10 minutes ago. And I know I have prowlers around the house. I am a nervous wreck. My dogs have been barking. My lights are all on. I've been running around the neighborhood looking for someone. In the backyard, my gate is open. You're so busy giving parking tickets, but when it's an emergency, you never can be found.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
It's his duty and desire to see that everyone in his community is given all possible protection. Williams reports everything is clear, and Brian assures the woman they will drive by periodically and keep a close watch on her residence. Officer Brian and his partner respond to a Code 2 call, shots fired, and find themselves in the middle of a heated landlord-tenant dispute. The landlord accuses the tenant of firing several shots from a .38 that he knows the man owns to upset and annoy the other tenants.
Yeah, you can see it, but it won't do you any good. Sir, what makes you so sure the shots came from his apartment?
Well, I was standing right outside the door.
How many shots did you hear?
3.
How many shots?
It seems just a petty squabble like so many others, but Brian will investigate until he is certain of what happened. If shots were fired, it might be necessary for him to go through the entire building to see that everything is all right. Happily, this time, that won't be necessary.
Do you think they really came from his apartment?
Certainly, I'm sure. There's no doubt about it.
Firecrackers. Some prankster's idea of a practical joke. So they were both right. Firecrackers do sound like a .38. Brian must be diplomat enough to settle a quarrel between individuals so that each will think he won. In response to an officer needs assistance call, a teenage party. The lone officer felt it was more than he could handle by himself. He suspected drugs. The officers cannot know what to expect. If the kids are on pills, they may resist arrest. If it's marijuana, they'll be incoherent and unpredictable. If it's speed, they can almost certainly expect a fight. It's amazing how these kids will demonstrate a little sleight of hand and never crack a smile. A treehouse. You'd think these kids were a little too old for that kind of thing. Brian is thankful for a peaceful reaction. Seems such a waste. The way these kids will fill their lungs with the smoke of a weed and then rejoice because everything is distorted. This incident will leave its damaging imprint on the lives of these youngsters much more than they now realize. It happens often, much too often. But each time Brian is still hit by the senseless, thoughtless action. And his thoughts always go back to his own children. Nothing is more suspicious to an officer on patrol than someone trying not to be seen. The girl is too well groomed and expensively dressed to be sitting in this old car. Brian's training and experience warn him, and he decides to investigate further. The horn is obviously a signal. She's probably a lookout for a burglar inside. Williams will check the back of the house. The people in the neighborhood, some of them already hostile towards the police, are convinced they are witnessing a case of flagrant police brutality. A catch-all phrase which can mean anything from a stern look to actual mistreatment. Brian knows it's vital that he keep his cool, but he feels beating down upon him the resentment, almost hatred, for the honky cop of the people in their rebellion against any authority. Their whole community has been shortchanged by society, and in their confused bitterness, the people take it out on the police officers, who try to maintain an orderly society and give protection. The situation is explosive, and Brian radios, "Officer needs help." Brian would give anything to be able to reach the people and reason with them, achieve a true meeting of the minds. It will come to pass. The police department already has many programs designed to promote understanding and cooperation. But meanwhile, it's the job of Brian and the other officers to try to prevent serious trouble. It's very late when Officer Bill Bryan finally gets off duty. It's been a long night, filled with the routine of police work. The next morning, Officer Bryan must go to court after working long into the night to testify in cases in which he was involved. For Bill Bryan, police work isn't just a 9-to-5 job. It's a profession.
A 1A55 and all units at Jefferson and Oberlin at the Union Station. A 211 just occurred. Shots fired. Suspect described as a male Caucasian, 17 to 18 years. Light blonde hair, wearing a blue shirt and blue jeans. Suspect left on foot westbound on Jefferson Boulevard. Suspect has a blue steel 2-inch revolver.
The young people watching the incident are even now jumping to a conclusion, the wrong one. They see only part of the whole picture. And from what they see, they assume they know it all. It happens all the time. But as with a movie, watching just part of it isn't going to give the whole, the true story. The boy can identify himself. He lives in the neighborhood and can account for his whereabouts and destination. And he can prove to the satisfaction of the officers that he cannot possibly be the suspect sought. Officer Bryan makes a point of telling the boy the reason that he was stopped, and he explains to him why he was searched. This, then, is Officer Bryan, Bill Bryan. A normal guy like most everyone else, doing a job the best he can. A job he believes in. The job of protecting his community and every citizen in it. Bill Bryan. A cop.
What does one under the influence of LSD hear, see, and do? We're about to take you into the world of the LSD user. A world that to him is real, yet as terrifying and unreal as anything ever imagined. We call his trip of terror to fly a giant bird.